Ready? Done? Fantastic. So welcome everyone to this session that is based on changing the game for circular innovation, a topic that probably many of us now refer to something that's absolutely urgent, but still so many things to learn about it. I mean, it's not evident that everyone will understand what circular economy is at the end, and we will hear from experts in different grounds and different regions of the world what they're doing in that sense. I'm Gonzalo Muñoz, high-level champion for COP25 and social entrepreneur of Schwab Foundation, working on circular economy in Latin America for the last 15 years. What I would like to also let to all of you know that, of course, this is a live stream session. I would encourage everyone being in the room or like attending or assisting to the session online to use the social media and hashtag WEF22 every time that you're doing so. But also, I would like to refer to the Slido tool that we will be using. We will have a moment when every one of you will have the possibility of sending some questions to our panelists, and therefore you can use the QR code that is shown in the screen or going into slido.com and use the hashtag circular innovation to send your question. So having said that, I would like to start by introducing our distinguished panelists today. First is Jacqueline Paul, the Managing Director of the Singapore Economic Development Bank from Singapore. Board, sorry. So thanks for being with us, Jacqueline. Then also in my left, Marco Adrián Hernández, the Impact Officer of the Mexico City Hub, mobilizing the young generations in Mexico towards circular economy. Then on my right, Mr. Francesco Starace, the Chief Executive Officer and General Manager of Enel from Italy. Thank you, Francesco, for being with us. And last but not least, Niveda Ram from the Chief Executive Officer from Trashcon, India. Thank you, Niveda, for being here. So with that, I would like just to start with the conversations between us. And I will, as I said before, when we were in the room, I would encourage you to also be free to interact amongst you and be able of generating discussions that are potentially outside of what is scripted from the team that prepared this session, and thanks to the circular economy team at the World Economic Forum. So Jacqueline, to balance the economic and development and environment sustainability in Singapore, a country that definitely is operating somehow amongst its barriers, you're taking a whole-of-government approach to championing the circular economy as a concept that is necessarily in the center of the development for the country. What types of public and private partnership are needed to unlock the next phase of investment needed to scale the circular economy innovation? What are you fostering in the circular economy innovation ecosystem?
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful to the World Economic Forum for inviting us here in a very circular space, actually. Singapore is about 64 square kilometers with about 5.9 million people. It's a very small country, and I suspect that we've been defined by our constraints since we were first independent. So we have very little land, no land for landfills. And also very little of other resources that is required, including water. So perhaps for many decades now, we have been a naturally circular economy out of sheer need to make that work. So for example, our waste is collected and put into waste-to-energy plants and converted into energy. The ashes are then taken to an island called Pulau Semakau. They are put into the ground, and therefore they form a new island, thereby giving us more land. In a land-constrained country, that means a lot. And on that land, we put solar panels. So this is one example of how we are circular. And we do the same for our water. Our water is actually recycled in Singapore. It's called new water. And then we put it into the reservoirs and we drink it again. So we do a lot to ensure that our footprint on Earth, our resource footprint, is as small as possible. The circular economy is as much an economic issue as it is an environmental issue. We believe that for the circular economy to work, it must be sustainable economically. And that means that we need to do two things. One is that we need to take a very comprehensive approach. Singapore takes a whole-of-government approach to circularity, which means that we need a whole life cycle look at where production is done, where consumption is done, where it goes next, and so on and so forth, which is why I've given you these examples. It also has to be collaborative. So any successful set of public-private partnerships for the circular economy needs to take into account the fact that this is an area where there are a lot of stakeholders, and there are a lot of sectors involved. And each of these sectors has very often no idea what the other sectors are doing, and they're not interested. Each of the parts of the value chain believe that their story begins here and ends there, and that the next party that takes that on from there has a different set of KPIs. So for collaborations to work, we need to bring together policymakers and government to set the right regulations and policies. We do need investors to provide the capital to companies that want to be involved in the circularity space. We need innovators, like some of the ones that are present here, to create the solutions and the business models for startups that will solve these problems. And we also need companies and consumers to get involved because they provide the feedstock and they provide the demand. And if they're unwilling to provide either the feedstock or pay a premium in certain cases for what comes out of it, then the economic part of the circular economy will be lost.
Well, fantastic, Jacqueline. And you mentioned one verb that for me still resonates. And you said, and then we drink it again. And that's not simple. I mean, in many countries like mine, we're operating on the basis on very complex treatments for sewage and water. And I remember perfectly when my brother went to Singapore and I said, and I drink it again. And that's not only relevant in terms of the technology and the importance for the environment to recirculate that water. That requires legislation that is not in place in any country, and culture. So the cultural change that requires for people to understand that that is fantastic is not simple. And that is something that we're seeing probably much easier when it comes to the younger generation. And with that in hand, I would like to turn into you, Marco. You represent a fantastic community of global Sherpas all around the world. The Mexico Hub is a great example of not only fostering this idea of innovation, but also bringing the capacity of the younger generation into action for the improvement of the state of the world. But in this case, also the Circular Shaper intervention is aiming to fostering the circular innovation ecosystem. Could you share your learnings for how to support circular innovation ecosystems and hopefully with such concrete examples as Jacqueline just got? What are you drinking in Mexico?
What I'm drinking? Well, we're drinking water as well. Not sure if it's a recycle, probably not. But first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm very happy for this opportunity. And yes, indeed, I would like to share how this experience was for me, because I felt like I was a teenager again. I remember when I was a teenager, I knew that I wanted to be fit and muscular to be healthy, right? But I had no idea how to do it. I knew that I could go to the gym to use these machines, but I had no idea until I found a good coach. So we've been applying the Scale 360 methodology that the World Economic Forum developed, and it's just like a good coach for circular economy, you know? In Mexico, what we found was that there's a lot of awareness of the need of sustainability and applying circular economy, but there's a lack of specific knowledge and specific tools to actually apply it. So that's exactly what we started doing. And I really like this methodology because it's designed in a way that it's not a one-size-fits-all methodology. It's a methodology that actually allows you to put your local knowledge to find these different contexts and stakeholders to move from zero to actually applying circular economy. So in Mexico, what we did was to work with a regional government. So they wanted to apply circular economy into decision-making processes and into their policy-making processes, but they didn't know how. So we designed this innovation and circular economy training for them, and we measured the impact. So before delivering the training, we measured how much knowledge did they have regarding circular economy, and how often did they actually apply circular economy. And well, no surprise, it was little knowledge and little application. We came back 3 months after the training, and we measured that again, and we saw significant positive results. Now this training is scaling in other Mexican cities to other public servants. So this is a great example, I think, of how Scale 360 methodology can be used for improving and enhancing circular economy. And this is a context where circular economy was kind of lacking, right? But I talked about the interaction and how adaptable this methodology is, because this methodology was also applied by my fellow shapers in the Brussels hub in a context where circular economy was everywhere, right? So the challenge there was to actually create value when there was a lot of circular economy solutions, and they did it. So that's what we're doing. We're applying circular economy through the Scale 360 methodology all over the world through global shapers.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Marco. And I think that you're referring to two fantastic initiatives from the WEF, one being Scale 360. I've been part of the Scale 360 initiative also in Chile and trying to support Helen and the team worldwide as well. But also you're referring to the circular shapers. Now it's operating in 9 national programs and 20 city hubs. 24 countries in total now have the Scale 360 presence. That's reaching now over 10 million via social media, and then approximately 450 people involved in implementing interventions that can become potential solutions, not only, as you said, for decision processes and policy making, but also to procurement. And that takes me to Francesco, because I'm one real admirer of what you have done in Enel in terms of positioning circular economy into your procurement and also facilitating the understanding of circular economy in potential sectors that are not necessarily the ones that people will understand that operate in a linear system, right? Enel is one of the largest utility companies in Europe and has been heavily investing and engaging with the circular transition, for example, as I said, with the circular procurement strategy that you launched in 2018 and your work on material circularity and the energy transition. What's one way circular innovation has somehow transformed how you do business, and what's the before and after? And I will also encourage you to please refer to the procurement strategies and what you were seeing around the world.
Thank you. I think, it's people many times, asked us, why do you get involved at all? Because you are mostly into renewable energy, which is intrinsically a circular economy, stuff. I mean, what more? What about that? And then clearly, if you look closely at what we're doing, yes, we are generating renewable energy, which is intrinsically, if you want, philosophically, a circular economy belonging, but we use a lot of things. We use stuff, we use plants, we use hardware, and that has a linear content or a circular content, and therefore we started looking at how much of that stuff was basically subject to a deep analysis in circular economy. And when I say stuff, I mean huge plants, a lot of, let's say, invested capital, assets. And that includes also assets which we own at the end and we want to dispose of. So if you think that a large utility going through an energy transformation, an energy transition phase, what this industry is doing is substituting plants with other plants, shutting down coal plants, shutting down gas-fired plants, and building other things. What about the plants you shut down? What about them? We had to shut down at this stage more than 25 plants around the world. We're talking about almost 15,000 megawatts of capacity. And we started a huge circular economy exercise, which we called e-future, which had to do with what to do with this infrastructure for the future. So instead of doing 25 funerals, we wanted to do 25 rebirths. And so how to manage this whole recircular transition was the beginning of this trip. So we started from that end. What to do with the things we want to know more. And then doing that, we found the value intrinsically in the stuff we own. And we found, therefore, what others could do if we had them thinking about it from the beginning. And that's where the procurement program started. And I think Jacqueline said it very rightly. This is a lot of collaborations. I mean, the supply chains are intrinsically intertwined and connected in a large way. No one really understands that unless you start to look at the circular economy content, because you are forced to map the interactions between different industries in ways that are not absolutely normal. And that is an effort when you look at how you want to do this, because it doesn't come often the first time. So you need to put constraints on people so that people are forced to think circularly. If not, they don't. So what we used in that sense is the abolition, or the removal of the word net in front of zero. So we said, dear suppliers, you are our scope 3 heroes. But we want to have scope 3 at 0 by a certain date. And we think you are a big part of this story. Let's find out how you get to 0. Not to net 0, to 0. Knowing that this is, in many cases, probably difficult at this stage. But removing the net started them and us thinking also on how we can reuse things so that we use less energy going forward. And these constraints that we put into the discourse unlocked a lot of innovation. I strongly believe that innovation sometimes needs to be forced into systems. It doesn't come normally out of them. So this constraint was used as a stimulus to start people thinking in circular manner. And it started a lot of findings and a lot of incredible, obvious things once they come up, because they were kind of easy, but they just didn't come to mind. So now, if you are a supplier of ours, you know that by a certain date we would like certain things, and by another date certain others, and you are the one that has set these dates, not us. But we together establish this path and work toward that. Certain things are easily done, others take a longer time, others apparently are impossible. But I think if we work hard on those, sooner or later we'll find solutions. The issue is today not to give up. So if you say net, the innovation dies, because you say, okay, I can't, I just offset with something else, and that's it. And goodbye to circular economy, and goodbye to really getting there. My experience is that this eventually recircles on us, because now we are designing things for our new installations that have this circular concept in the design phase. And so this makes the next round easier. So, but it came from them back to us. Ourselves, we didn't think of that. The vendors came up saying, look, okay, you want to do this, but you have to change your design here, here, and here. And therefore, that started our circular design phase, which is still underway. Actually, I don't think it will ever end.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Francesco. And I like the approach of removing the net, so going towards absolute zero. And I'm sure, Niveda, your experience is exactly that one. Niveda and your organization, Trashcom, is part of the winning cohort from the informal plastic collection innovation in Indonesia challenge and is now part of the broader global plastic innovation network, a growing network of high-impact innovations engaged in tackling plastic pollution, leveraged by the Global Plastic Action Partnership and Uplink, all of that pursuing the absolute zero when it comes to plastic pollution. Yeah? We're now in a moment when the world is developing the treaty for avoiding all types of plastic pollution. You developed the world's first completely automated trash sorting and recycling system called the Trash Bot, operational with more than 15 zero-waste plants established across India. I'm wondering why you now are thinking about moving to Philippines, where probably India requires much more than 15 zero-waste plants. I'm not saying don't go to Philippines, I'm saying I'm curious and wondering what are those plans. And when it comes to informal workers like waste pickers, how can we ensure that no one gets left behind as part of the circular transition? At the end, there is a connection with those citizens that Enel is also enabling to be part, those providers that Marco was referring to as Singapore is a community of people thinking about this. At the end, the human aspect of this, when it comes to your work, probably is much more related to consumers, of course, but also the waste pickers. How are they incorporated into your solution?
Well, so yeah, I'll take you to the streets of India and to the landfills. That's where everything started. So if you want to do circular economy and recover plastics, you can't recycle a plastic that has food sticking onto it, diaper, sanitary napkin, dead rat, metals, glass. You know, imagine whatever you want. You can't recover plastic from, you can't recycle this, right? This is nowhere going anywhere close to circular economy. So the first step is, how do you recover this? Now, if you tell we are going to employ manpower to do this, it's not only inhuman, it's impractical too. Because you and I don't want to touch our own waste. We don't want somebody else touching our diapers, right? So that's when we realized, and this problem is real, right? In countries like India, Africa, Middle East, every other country that has a huge population, very different demographic dividends, very different geographies, all put together, this is what really happens. It's reality. Of course, behavioral change is a solution to it, but there's a huge interim problem of landfills getting burgeoned, kids being born with respiratory cancer near this landfill. So that's when we thought, what do we do? How do we create circular economy? And the first step was to recover plastics, to recover value. So that we did with a bot that we invented. And I invented it by being a waste picker myself. So I went on to the landfills, touched waste with my own hands, sat there for 3 years, and figured out what the hell do we do with this. So that's when we developed the bot. And you're right, we are across 20 cities now in 5 states, not 15. And we're preventing close to 500 tons of waste from entering the landfills every day in India. But our model is very different. And after we did this, the circular part, so okay, I recovered, then what? So I thought we solved the world's problem, and that waste is now solved. But then we realized so we basically made a bot that can separate this trash that I told you into degradables, non-degradables, and metals, right? Because then I thought degradables can be made into biogas or fuel, and non-degradables can be recycled, and metals, of course, has value. But after we did this, we realized, yes, degradables were getting converted because a lot of companies doing that conversion. But the non-degradables were plastics. And I went with this plastics to recyclers, and nobody wanted it. I was wondering why, because I thought plastics can be recycled. So, surprisingly, the plastics that we were getting was the plastics that even waste pickers don't want. Those are called like the multi-layered plastics. These are your chips packets, your food packaging, which has a layer of aluminum sticking onto it, and God knows what the material is made of, because every brand has a different material. So then we realized, what is the solution? Of course, waste to energy is a great solution too. I mean, we love all technologies. But in countries like India, where there are smaller villages, smaller cities, we don't have so much land to set up a huge waste-to-energy plants. And every waste-to-energy plant was like 400 kilometers away from the city that was producing the waste. So we wanted something that was local and creating value and employing people, right? Creating dignified employment from the trash that has no value. So we pushed ourselves, developed yet another technology to recycle the non-recyclable plastics into recycled sheets, which are like plywood. So we developed sheets which are like plywood. So it's an alternative to plywood, and better than plywood because it's waterproof and termite proof. So we not only solved one problem, but another two by stopping deforestation for that matter. But another most important part is circular economy doesn't mean you just create a product. We made it in a way that it can be recycled again and again and again. So we don't add binders, we don't add chemicals, we don't use water, because we don't want to contaminate water. We thermally sterilize it. We have made it toxicity free. but the product can be recycled again and again. So I have a buyback offer from my customer when I give the material that I'll take it back and pay you for it. So this is how we have ensured that we stay true to the North Star of circular economy during our entire process. So this is what we did. And now with the waste that has no value, we are able to give a payback of 3 years and offer a 10x return on the investment. So now more entrepreneurs are coming up and taking up cities and making their cities zero waste, not net zero, zero waste. So that's what we did. But now the world is coming to us. We can't help it. So Philippines came to us. Now we are also expanding in other countries. So they came to us, and we are a Indian technology for the globe. So yeah, we don't restrict just being in India. It's a global problem. It's a burning problem. So that's
Brilliant, fantastic example, fascinating. I'm willing to get to know from your experience and visiting your initiative in India. So I think this has been extremely inspirational, and of course we have realized how different are the approaches. I would like now to open for the Q&A, but before offering the Q&A for the audience, I would like to offer this for of you. If any one of you would like to ask someone else a question about what you have already heard, if not, I can start. But
can I ask a question to Navida? I mean, how long did it take to go through this? I mean, how long did you work from? So because it was like a 5 minutes discussion, but how long did it take to?
So from idea to conversion, actually overall 5 years, but in the dump sites 3 years. We made the prototype in just 6 months. Like, wow, we got an idea and made. When we went and set it up in the dump site, the results were reverse because the person who was handling our machine was unskilled. So we had to make a product that is foolproof and modular. But that helped us now to go to any particular geography of any other part of the world as well. So I think we faced only challenges. And I wouldn't call it a number of years because we have really not had holidays. So I don't know. I mean, if you have to put a number, it's almost totally 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
That's kind of a short time, actually.
Yeah.
Wow. But do you know why this was not invented before? You know.
Yeah, that's a very good question that many people ask. So we are no geniuses at all. People say, oh, wow, you guys developed. We are people who are feeling super helpless seeing our streets filled with waste and seeing that site every day.
Yes.
And we are those people who left everything, went to the dump sites, rolled up our sleeves, and sat down for years, not months, day and night to figure out a problem. I've been at 12 a.m. at a landfill, still figuring out what on earth to do. So I think that's the only reason why we could solve it. So problems like this cannot be solved in a laboratory. There are many prototypes, but if it has to work at scale, you need to go become a waste picker, to solve it. So that's the only reason.
Cool. So I have a few questions now. So for you, Marco, and connected to what Francesco mentioned, are you seeing any change at the political level from the government, both local or national, on procurement on circular economy? Is it reaching the point where there's opportunities on embedding circular economy into the purchase power that government has?
Yeah, so we spoke with several governments, right, at the local and regional level. And I think everywhere the awareness was there already. But again, we were lacking this specific knowledge and specific tools. So I guess they're getting to that point, because the government that we were working for, they were actually very interested to apply this training so they could go and develop big infrastructure projects. So there's money already there. And it's money being invested in infrastructure with this circular economy perspective. So I guess it's happening. It's happening at the moment. It requires a lot of planning, and it requires to be there with the right information and the right tools so they can incorporate it. It has to become more mainstream, and the resources need to be a bit more available to them. But the awareness is there. And if you provide these opportunities, I guess it can be incorporated now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So for you, Jacqueline, as Singapore is a country that, as you've explained very properly, is quite ahead of this technology logic type of economy. When you come to Davos, what are those technologies or innovations that can inspire a person that is so in the top of the agenda? Have you seen something that you can share that inspires you?
Oh, thanks a lot. Well, we have a zero waste master plan in Singapore, and that goes exactly to what Anel was saying, which is, it is about being zero waste and about aligning everybody's interest towards making that happen. And we also have extended producer responsibilities on things like e-waste. Now, a lot of the problems with circularity is that technology is not ready yet. We talk a lot about things like biodegradable packaging materials that can dissolve in seawater, so that when that water bottle goes in, plastic water bottle goes in, PET water bottle goes into seawater, it just dissolves. Unfortunately, it's not cost effective and it's not scalable. So a lot of work needs to be done in research and development to make some of these things available. Some of the things that we have found to be useful in Singapore include things like pyrolysis oil. So in many of the cases, just as my colleague has mentioned, there's food stuck to plastic packaging. It's not something that can be mechanically sorted and this water bottle becomes that water bottle. It is something that has to be burnt in order to create a certain kind of oil, and then that has value, and then it can be sold, and again, that becomes an economic proposition. So a lot of the solutions in this space are actually going to be in the chemical arena, as well as in things like artificial intelligence and digital, to be able to do advanced sorting with IoT. In the room earlier, we were having a discussion about what it was about the sorting trash mechanism that was able to sort out things of higher moisture levels, things that were metal, things that were glass. And again, these are actually IoT sensors. So a combination of physics and chemistry is going to be required to make the big difference in circularity, to transform plastic or e-waste materials into other things like pyrolysis oil, or to be able to sort them out effectively using AI and other IoT sensors.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Francesco, you referred to the transformation. I love what you said, like those 25 rebirths instead of funerals. And we have a question here about what's the type of technology that you're implementing when it comes to closing coal power plants, for example, and if there's any connection to hydrogen, for example. Can you transform a coal power plant into a green hydrogen plant?
No.
And what's the rebirth for a coal power plant?
You have a coal power plant since maybe 30 years or 40 years, or just in the case of Bocamina, 5 years. Right. It's still doomed anyway. So you say, am I going to change this plant into another plant? Yes, of course. So in some cases, it makes sense to convert it to another technology. But in some cases, it just doesn't make sense anymore as a power plant. So in here, you find yourself saying, I deal with power plants. So I don't know what else to do. So we said, OK, this is a perfectly available site with a very well-connected network to it, pretty high connection. All logistics are there. It's kind of large. Mayor of the city, local administrators, universities, architects, entrepreneurs, come to us with your projects, to what you want to do on this site. Not a power plant. Because if it was a power plant, we'd already find a solution. Anything else but a power plant. So provide your ideas. And we make a commission together with the local people, the council of the city or whoever, so that together we judge the best project. Our task is to take away what they don't need, leave what they want to leave, clean up. We always keep the connection to us, the network connection, because typically we put batteries there. But other than that, we help this completely redesign of a complete new site. So we found cases in which they wanted the chimney to stand because they wanted to have an elevator and go up, and they put a touristic village in the area. And we would never think of that.
Do you already have one case like
that?
Yeah,
we have.
Where?
It's in the Po. It's at the end of the Po River. It's a huge place. This was a 2,400 megawatt power plant, huge. So it's a fantastic eco-village, by the way. In another case, it was a commercial center. In another case, it was a which was something that I was totally surprised. It was a center for extreme sports. You know, people that want to risk their lives climbing stuff and throwing themselves out of. So, and they wanted, in this case, they wanted the tanks to stay up because they wanted to climb the tanks. So, and of course, there is lots of stuff you have to take away, and then you can recycle. But it's not just the recycling; it's just the rebirth of a different use of land, use of territory, and completely different people. And in fact, most of the times, we employ more people in the site with a different, completely different object there, rather than the power plant.
Are you capable of incorporating the just transition element into that strategy?
Yes, provided that, you know, we had cases in which the people that were used to transport coal said, we don't want to change, we want to keep transporting coal. I said, guys, I mean, you have to transport other things than coal because there's no more coal around here. What's the big deal here? But our trucks are, then, you know, you get into these kind of small things. But eventually, people get it. And, you know, the funny thing is that the first to understand that were our own employees in the power plant. Because they said, you know, it was just about time because we sensed that something was going on. This plant was not working in the last 3 years. So, I mean, how long did it take for you to understand that we needed to do something about this? So circular economy is somehow difficult more for management than for normal people, or for, I mean, we're also normal, but in some way not. In some way not. We're abnormal in many ways because we think we know everything, we don't. So we just said, why don't you just find out other ways of doing things? So this rebirths were totally different animals. They were not power plants, by and large.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I
But
think you
not hydrogen.
No, okay. But I'm thinking about mechanisms like
Just take hydrogen out of
right
this
now.
place.
But probably many people will think, like as you said, you have the mechanisms for distributing energy, and there might be people saying you have to use that as a capacity of generating energy.
You notice I said we keep the transmission constraint.
Right.
We keep the transmission nodes because we put batteries there. But, you know, batteries like takes like hundreds of the footprint. The rest is free for everything else.
Right. So probably you mentioned part of the answer to the following question. As it says, like Francesco mentioned, that sometimes innovation that is needed doesn't happen on its own, right?
No.
For all the other three of you.
For her, yeah.
What are more ways to help it along? And probably would like to start with you, Nivela. What are the conditions that will help to provoke that innovation on circular economy?
Lots. Actually, many things I can go on, but but certain things, like for example, now the reason why innovation developed or I got to know was there was more awareness about the problem, which is where we are. It's a great time to be in, where people are more and more aware that there is a real problem. It's a visible problem. But what is not okay is that the policies globally as well as country-wise are not supportive of newer technologies, taking more risks to adopt newer technologies, and also not supportive of circular economy in a way. For example, if I have to tell you, we are creating sustainable products to replace plywood. Great, awesome. And we are even doing it in a price point which is similar to plywood. But still, there's such a huge risk aversion for larger corporates to adopt a newer material, just because it's new. Just because it's new. Now, what if they're incentivized to adopt a circular product or a sustainable product? I'm not saying penalize. Incentivize, because penalizations always find a way around them, we have seen. But when you incentivize them, say for example, you use a recycled product, we give you a rebate. You know, every corporate will want to do it. You know, and there needs to be an output. If you want to do a circular economy, that output should go somewhere into the economy. That's what it is. But for that, the government policies has to enable the buyers to sort of buy this product as an alternative to the existing ones. So I think such policies has to be there. Secondly, no innovation is perfect. Like, we are not perfect. We are constantly evolving too. And there should be that ability for governments, for cities, for corporates, for customers to try out, I'm talking at our scales, and not for individuals, but to try out newer products, work with them, collaborate. We are in individual silos, innovation separate, government is separate, corporates are separate, everybody is sitting in their own silos and talking about the problem. No, we should be talking across a table. You know, talking across a table and talking to each other. Policies are made in closed doors. Policies for circular economy are made in closed doors. while we are the ones on the ground driving the decisions. Government decides the policies, then corporates have a problem, and then corporates decide the policies, innovators have a problem. So why not bring everybody into the same room and force them to talk to each other? Then every policy that comes out will actually work. We don't need 100 iterations and 100 learnings for it to make it work. So I think lots I can keep going on, but these are some of the things I feel is a must need for circular economy to actually be coming into the picture, and for more innovators to be incentivized to come into the picture. Because more are coming in, but more are fizzling out as well because of such support not coming into the picture.
Brilliant. I think that both experience speaks about the importance of collaborating and bringing together not only all of the traditional stakeholders, but also many others that potentially are not necessarily incorporated into the seek of the solution. Jacqueline, what's your perspective in that sense? How you can potentially allow that innovation to happen more than what is happening nowadays?
I greatly admire the fact that any circular innovator who doesn't need a lot of support to get funding, financing, sort of get that demand going, even if the product is at a premium, doesn't need to worry about feedstock. I find that completely admirable. A lot of the time, these are all major issues that are the heart of the cross-sector collaboration that is required to make the circular economy work. In Singapore, we've done two things to solve at least two of these problems. The first has to do with the business case and the circular innovator. So very often we find a lot of fairly well-meaning companies that are in the circular economy space who want to make a huge difference, but who need a little bit of extra help in understanding how their business model should work. We've set up something in April this year together with an innovation sort of consultancy called Startup X called Hyperscale. And this addresses the needs of plastics and e-waste tech company. So it's Singapore's first waste tech acceleration program for startups. And the idea behind this was really to bring them together and give them a better idea of what would be required to make those business models work, including what kind of policies they really need to start lobbying for, and which companies they need to start talking to in terms of getting their feedstock, in terms of being the consumer goods companies or chemicals companies they need at the end. So that's one thing that would be I think would maybe helpful for circular innovators. The other one, as I've mentioned, is capital. I think because of the perceived low economic value of some of these businesses compared to some other alternatives out there in terms of what startups are doing in crypto and in the metaverse, for example, this is somewhat less. I think the valuations of these companies come in at a lot less. I have yet to see a large number of waste tech unicorns in the venture capital space. So it is important to bring together funds for sustainability and impact investment to be able to support a lot of our circular innovators as they build out their companies.
Brilliant. Thank you. Marco?
Yeah, so from the point of view of the youth, we have to keep up the enthusiasm and transform that into connecting entrepreneurs with companies and then supporting the companies that are already being sustainable and taking to place circular economy. And I would just like to share a small reflection of my own that drives my purpose, basically. And is that we are all connected, right? Humans, animals, plants. And at the end, taking care of the environment, taking care of the planet is just a pure act of self-love. At the end, we are all the same thing, right? So,
well, thank you so much. Definitely, I expect that everyone have learned a lot from the experience of our amazing panelists. I myself, considering someone that knows about circular economy, have learned definitely a lot, including that you should not transform a coal power plant into hydrogen. Never do that. Then we can have an extra session with Mr. Starachi and he can explain the details. But I would like to thank our speakers for contributing to a rich discussion, highlighting how we can collectively scale circular innovation. I have no doubt that there are very concrete examples that were highlighted today. For those of you attending in person or being part of the program, we have some exciting circular economy sessions still to come on the program, including the innovation for ESGs, the responsible waste disposal, briefing in the Congress Center Forum Hub with TrashCon panelists directly.
Please come, please. It's right in the group.
Directly after this session, so you're all invited to follow the conversation about how to responsibly dispose waste. We look forward, of course, to continuing this journey toward a circular economy together with champion companies like the one we have had, governments and change makers. Thank you all for an amazing session. Thanks for attending. And again, thanks to the four of you.
Thank you.
And just on time. The Germans are doing something like that, aren't they? Or trying? Yeah, give. Yeah.